Welcome to Truth Be Told. I'm your host, Tony Sweet. Joining me now, your other host, Captain Ron, is here. We have a great show for you guys today. We have the best-selling author, Marie D. Jones. She's an author, screenwriter, producer, researcher, public speaker. You may have seen her on many television shows, heard her on many radio shows, and we're going to talk about some of her books she has written on some of our favorite subjects, such as UFO and aliens. Is there anybody out there? Ghosts, spirits, and hauntings. Am I being haunted? Demons, the devil, and fallen angels. And I want to talk about a subject that's kind of hot in the news right now and could affect our future. We are going to talk about, could Yellowstone be next? And I'm talking about, yes, the supervolcano, catastrophic event that changed the course of human history. So much to talk about, and we hope you guys join us right here on Truth Be Told. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel and share this with your friends and family. Please, welcome to Truth Be Told, Marie D. Jones.
All right. Awesome. I love applause. Keep playing.
Tony,
keep playing it.
Well put, buddy.
Yeah, we didn't ever ask a question. We just keep playing applause for 50 minutes.
Right.
That's great. That's great.
Welcome everyone to Truth Be Told. I'm Captain Ron. That's Tony Sweet, and today's guest is amazing. She has so many books on so many Truth Be Told subjects that we could do a month of shows, right, Tony?
Please. This is
going to be hard to
just
cut it down to one. And as Tony mentioned in that intro, Maria, if you wouldn't mind, we would love to start with the supervolcano topic, which I want to mention to you that I remember specifically like 8 years ago hearing you and your father on Coast to Coast talk about the supervolcano. And even though it was that long ago, I remember hearing that show because the statistics on supervolcanoes is so overwhelming. I don't think people realize how powerful these are and how they change the course of history.
Yeah. They're not, people think of large volcanic eruptions that we have lived through or that, we've had during recorded history, but it's just nothing like that. It is tens of times worse. We have not had a supervolcano. 28,000 years ago was the last one. So we've not had one that we can have reference points about. We can just sort of say, well, it was, 30 times larger than Mount St. Helens. But I think people have a hard time wrapping their mind around that. So when something like this happens, there's just so much stuff, debris, gas, rock, and all kinds of things that go into the atmosphere that it literally will create what's called a volcanic winter, but it's the same thing as a nuclear winter, which people I think are familiar with from watching disaster movies, where a nuclear bomb goes off or there's nuclear war. Literally, it's about 6 years worth of the sun being so blotted out to the point that it just affects everything from the weather to agriculture, dying crops, undrinkable water from all the ashfall. And it just, because we're so dependent on technology and infrastructure, all of that will be gone. All of that will crumble. And, it's kind of like The Walking Dead. You'll have people turning on each other and, not enough food and water. And then you get into the whole issue of human behavior during such catastrophic events. So yeah, it'd definitely be something that we don't want to experience.
Well, not only that, how about the fact that it pretty much decimated our population? Weren't we down to like between 2,000 and 10,000 people on Earth during Toba?
We did. So exactly. So the Toba supervolcano that my father and I wrote about, my dad had always wanted to write about the Toba catastrophe theory, because it had so much to do with the genetic differentiation that we see and the out of Africa and why our population sort of developed and evolved the way it did. And so we decided, let's take a look at this. And so this theory states, and it's very widely accepted among a number of scientists, but there's also some debate as to whether or not. But apparently what happened was about 75,000 years ago, the Toba supervolcano, which is now Lake Toba, because that's usually what happens is they implode and become lakes. in Sumatra, in Indonesia, super erupted. And at the time, there was approximately 100,000 individuals on Earth. And they were all sort of situated in the general region of Africa and southern Asia. And the supervolcano was so catastrophic that it created what's called a population bottleneck. And it literally decimated such a high percentage of the population. So it went from, like, say, 100,000 down to 2 to 8,000, or some people think 2 to 10,000. But the only way we could catch up was to inbreed and to just, breed like crazy to get our numbers back up to a sustainable level. And so a lot of our genetic coding and variation and what we see looks like it came from a small group of people. Around that time, something changed. So
this literally spawned races, pretty much, right?
Yeah. The thing is, now we have 7 billion? I don't even. We might even be close to 8.
Right.
So something like that wouldn't happen again. I mean, certainly it would wipe out a lot of people, especially anybody within 500 miles of the actual eruption site, and then millions more over time. But I don't think we have to worry anymore about,
population.
There's so many of us.
Right.
We're so overpopulated that I don't think that would happen unless it happened as a result of, say, an asteroid impact. So if an asteroid hit and then created a super eruption or more than one, then yeah, we might want to say goodbye to our loved ones.
Right.
That could literally extinct the entire planet, right? If that happened.
Yeah, my dad and I loved. My dad was a geophysicist. He passed away a few years ago. Unfortunately, we wanted to write more books, but we didn't have the chance. But we used to love to have conversations about, how catastrophic would some natural disaster have to be. And the truth is, again, because there's so many of us now, we're so spread out across the planet.
Right.
There's just a few things that would do the final deed. And asteroid impact, depending on how big it was, gamma ray burst, when you have a number of catastrophes that occur together, we would even say, well, nuclear war to an extent, but there'd still be survivors. So the human race is pretty hard to kill off, but it's not
We're like
impossible.
roaches.
Yeah, we are.
Well, no, you're right. I always found that fascinating because I remember it was either the History Channel or the National Geographic that they did a show that, the top 10 ways that, the extinction of man, and, the supervolcano was one, meteor, and, even nuclear war, all this stuff. But for some reason, the supervolcano seems to always be the one that gets talked about the least. And I think it's because it's been so inactive. But when I saw this, seriously, like a week ago on CNN's page, that it talked about, slight activity, and I was just like, oh gosh. I was like,
Yellowstone's close to us, Tony.
Yeah, I know. But I was looking at the fallout. It looked like because of the jet stream and the way that most of it goes, it won't hit California as much as it would mostly south and
well,
east.
It would come back around. So what would happen is the northern hemisphere, say Yellowstone or Long Valley. The problem with Long Valley caldera is that it is tectonically linked to activity on the San Andreas Fault.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have the big one, it's possible that could trigger a super eruption. Yellowstone's a little more isolated, but they're both equally massive enough that what would happen is within a 500, even maybe a little more, because again, we don't have anything to reference, just the geological record, but everybody would die. And I laugh just because it's just so mind-boggling to think about. But what would happen is that over time, the ash would literally wrap itself around the northern hemisphere, and then because of other climate patterns and wind patterns, it would enter the southern hemisphere maybe, a couple of years later.
Right.
But in terms of the northern hemisphere, it would eventually envelop the whole globe. And it would again, it would blot out the sun enough so that agriculture, especially in our Midwest agricultural area, would just be decimated.
Wow.
And then you deal with ash fallout. You could deal with that for years. And then you deal with, illnesses and respiratory illnesses that people will develop, and the infrastructure breakdown. And, it's sort of like a snowball that all these things will sort of happen on top of each other to the point where there could be a breakdown. It's just like with an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse. The event itself may not kill too many people. It's what happens after.
Right, exactly.
So with a supervolcano at Yellowstone, Yellowstone is not near as many urban areas as, say, something like Long Valley, which is closer to LA, San Diego, big city areas. But regardless of that, there's going to be a lot of people that are killed initially, but most of the damage will occur in the coming years. And that's something that we don't really know how that's going to unfold, because it's never happened in modern times.
Yeah, we don't think of volcanoes in terms of years either. You think of that as an event. Oh, yeah, Mount St. Helens went off, and that whole week or month, it doesn't feel like a multi-year event.
Exactly. It stops. It's like a hurricane. We all watch in horror as these wildfires tear through a state, or the hurricane, goes up the East Coast, but they stop eventually. And
right.
Yeah, you're left with the aftermath, but the event itself has stopped. Well, with a supervolcano, there's almost like, the during event and then the after effects, which continuously, again, could go for as long as 6 years.
Hey, Marie, let's talk about the during part for a second. Like the during, I don't think people also understand how, in say like Mount St. Helens I just mentioned, I understand that Toba was like 3,000 times as strong as Mount St. Helens. Is that accurate?
3,000.
Yep.
Whew.
If you could even wrap your mind around that. So in order to qualify as a supervolcano, you have to, the volcano, has to, erupt a certain amount of materials into the atmosphere, and it's about 120 cubic miles. Think about that. That's a lot. That's a lot of materials that are going up into the atmosphere, and they're just going to hang there. Ash will fall, but you still have gases, and you still have, the things that are just going to stick up there for a long time, and that's what's going to cause most of the problems after the initial event. And then not only that, but these supervolcanoes can erupt in stages. A few vents can open, and those vents will erupt. And then, maybe 2-3 weeks later, more will go. And then maybe a month later, the whole damn thing will go. So it can be a sort of a long-lasting actual super eruption in and of itself.
Yeah, I'm showing a picture right now of if you're watching us on YouTube or live streaming on Facebook Live, comparisons. The Toba to, I think I can't read it. My eyesight's not the greatest, but El Chichon in Mexico, and Mount St. Helens, and wow, it is. It was what 2,800. I think I can't read it, but anyway, it looks huge.
Yeah,
huge difference. Huge difference. Yeah, and I'm showing that there's 3 worldwide, 3 supervolcanoes, and they've went off in various stages. Are we overdue? Which ones are overdue?
Well, there are actually 40.
40.
Right.
Supervolcanoes.
A lot more than 3, yeah.
At the time that my dad and I wrote the book, there were 40 identifiable supervolcanoes, but most of them they're not even, they're dead. They're not even dormant.
Oh, okay.
They're dead. So
Which
there's
is good.
no magma chambers beneath, they happen like millions upon millions of years ago. There's a few that, are potentially dormant, but not for a long time, because they just haven't built up enough magma in their chambers beneath the calderas. The two that are most troublesome, unfortunately, I live in San Diego, California. They're in the state, in this area. There's Yellowstone, which of course the western region, and then Long Valley, which is in California. And now there's also some research being done to identify a possible massive caldera in the Cascadian region in the Pacific Northwest, which is incredibly active with earthquakes and volcanoes. So, and then, here's another thing. We don't know if we've identified all of the supervolcanoes beneath the oceans. So one of those could erupt, causing tsunamis and flooding and you name it.
Hey, Marie, aren't we also talking about
supervolcanoes is they're so rare because it takes such a long time for the amount of magma needed to build up that kind of power. That it's not something that we really need to worry about unless there's a lot of signs. And earthquake swarms are one of the signs. And we always hear about Yellowstone and tree kill. When the water in that area starts to heat up too much. But nothing has led yet to a super eruption. And one of the problems that we have is we don't know all of the steps that lead up because, we weren't around to record that. We just know some of them. So really scared and nervous, and then nothing happens. But who knows?
Marie, aren't we close on time, though? Don't they think it was, for Yellowstone, I thought it was 2 million years ago, and then like 700,000 years later, and then 640,000. So we're sort of, quote unquote, due, like it's due for its third or fourth eruption. Aren't we?
No, because the middle, one of those, I think it was the middle eruption, ended up not being qualified as a supervolcano. So that threw that time scale off a little.
So it'll only be a minor volcano, Tony. Nothing to worry about.
Right, no worries.
Billions die, that's all.
But here's the thing. We really don't know. If there's a lot of, if they can detect a lot of movement of magma, and there's a lot of microquakes, and there's vents that are opening and just small, little vents, I would evacuate to all points east, north, and south. But we just don't know. What if there's a massive earthquake that even is so strong that it affects things near Yellowstone? It moves some things around. It shifts the magma here, and it causes a 7-point earthquake. We don't know what's going to happen, but from what we do know, none of them are due tomorrow. Right. It's much more of a threat that the smaller volcanoes are going to be going off all around us, which they do all the time, and as well as earthquake activity.
And more, and is it true that the more these smaller ones go off, the better it is to relieve the pressure anyway? Or am I wrong?
Not for the supervolcanoes.
They're they don't care. We do our own thing.
because their magma chambers are self-contained. They're not linked to, like, Mount St. Helens. Each volcano has its own little chamber, and so they're not linked. But again, the biggest dangers seem to be supervolcanic calderas that are also in areas or near areas where there can be a massive earthquake. And that's why when we wrote the book, we wrote a scenario for Long Valley rather than Yellowstone, because we thought, well, all right, if the big one is coming, here's another thing we might have to worry about, depending on where along the San Andreas the big one happens. And so it's always something with this planet. But that's the thing. This planet is not dead. It's still active. It's still seismically active.
And I
so
think
people have to kind of be aware of that.
But even if it got to the point where it wasn't as active, would we be able to live here anyway? Because that's what a lot of this stuff, it kind of keeps things, going. So I think
it helps overall, but it kills us along the way.
Right. That's
volcanoes. They actually do help the soil and plant life and genetic variation, but we human beings have chosen to live really close to them. So, Is that our fault? Yeah, probably. Just like we choose to live in hurricane areas and tornado alley, we have to kind of know that this comes with the territory. I mean, again, people who live in California know that there could be major earthquakes.
Well, I always said,
but we live here anyway.
No, exactly, and I always say that, when natural disasters happen, and it does, and it unfortunately does take lives, I don't feel as bad because it is part of nature. We are part of nature. We kind of forget that we are part of nature, and
yes, exactly.
And so it doesn't make me feel as bad, except when we kill ourselves. If it was a nuclear war, if it's
yeah,
that's when I start feeling like this. That's kind
I
of ridiculous.
agree. I just wrote a book. I have a new book coming out next year. It's an emergency survival guide.
Oh.
And
wow.
I had to write, half of it's about natural disasters. The other half covers man-made. And the natural disasters fascinate me because I love nature. And yes, honestly, I feel like you do. I grieve the fact that so many people died, but there is that solace or that comfort that, we didn't cause it. And then when I get to the man-made and this mass shooting that occurred and, the wars and disasters that occur at the hands of humans, it's such a different story. So we can survive a lot of things. But then the psychological aspect is really strange because, it's Mother Nature doing what Mother Nature does, as opposed to it's my fellow humans.
Right. I like Las Vegas, right? Like that was probably
right.
Yeah, exactly.
That messed with people.
Yeah.
Well, I want to kind of switch gears a little bit because we are in the Halloween season and everybody's, we love a good stories on, scary places and ghosts and demons and goblins and all this stuff. And I want to talk about one of your books, Demons, the Devil, and Fallen Angels. Because you have a variety. You're kind of like Truth Be Told. We don't just do UFOs. We don't just do conspiracy theory. We don't do ghosts and goblins. We do everything, things that interest us. And I think that you're that type of writer because when I look at your repertoire, you have so many things that I'm like, I love that. I love that. I love that. So I want to talk about the Demons, the Devil, and the Fallen Angels. What inspired you to write this book, and what did you find interesting in doing your study and research?
Gosh. Well, it's okay. So like you said, whether I write with another person or on my own, I write about things that fascinate me. But this book was one of the maybe 3 or 4 books that I've done where the publisher, and this was a new publisher that I never worked with before, asked if I wanted to write the book and if Larry and I wanted to do the book. And I was thrilled because I'd never worked for a visible ink press before. When they said the subject, I said, oh, okay, that's really cool. But as soon as I started talking to colleagues, like in the paranormal field, oh, my God, they were, oh, Marie, you have to protect yourself and, stage your house and do a circle, and
right.
You shouldn't write this book. They scared the living crap out of me. And I was not afraid. So the whole time writing the book, I'm having people that I really respect tell me, oh, things are going to happen. Don't say their names out loud or don't, whatever.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, well, I have to write this book. So sorry. It was the most fascinating book that I've ever researched because we think we know a lot about the devil or demons or what angels are. And then when you actually get down into the research of where these concepts began and how they evolved over time, you see the stamp of different belief systems and how they change our interpretation of things. And I'm not a Christian, so I was able to really write the book from a very objective,
which is great,
almost encyclopedic, and that's exactly what the publisher wanted, like an encyclopedic, very informative. Try to keep your opinion out of it. That's impossible, but you got to do your best. And so it was really cool for me because I like to look at, and no matter what I write, the origin of things. The devil, how did that concept originate, demons, but first having to go all the way back to talk about the beginning of a concept of evil. And guess what? We were talking about Mother Nature. That's where it came from. It came from our primitive ancestors, lack of scientific knowledge. And here they are looking at everything around them that's going on in the natural world. And they begin to categorize things as good or bad. Obviously, the presence of a lot of, animals to eat and water and shelter is good. And thunderstorms where, Joe gets electrocuted by lightning or some kind of jaguar-type creature eats baby Frank, that's bad. So we began to categorize things. And then, with our belief that there was something bigger than us, we began to ascribe deities to those categorizations. And that's where good and evil came from. And then God and the devil and angels and demons and the whole hierarchy of these beings that we originally ascribed to nature. Now, I'm not saying that there are no, weird demons and strange entities and ghosts and things like that. But the beginning of this for us as human beings came from just really observing the world around us and seeing good things and seeing bad things and sticking them into columns.
I find fascinating, and I remember doing a show on Truth Be Told about maybe 2 years ago. And at the time, my co-host he didn't even want to come in because it scared him too much. But I interviewed a priest of the Church of Satan, and I found it fascinating because I couldn't wait. They're like, but that's scary and this and that, and I'm just like, but no, I really want to know their traditions and what like with religion, what influences them. One of the nicest guys I have ever met. He was one of the nicest guys.
Yeah.
They raise money for homeless. They raise money for children. And I said, I asked about the rituals. He goes, yeah, there are people out there that do practice, worshiping through drinking blood and all that. He goes, we don't do that through the Church of Satan. He goes, there's other people that may do that, but we don't. He talked about that they don't allow kids under 18 to join the Church of Satan. And I said, which is fascinating because we force kids under 18 to go to church and believe in the religion. So I just found it fascinating that everything that I went into, and thank God I had an open mind about it, was completely not true.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's such a stigma. I dated a guy in the Church of Satan for 9 months, and we broke up for other reasons, but it was cool. I mean, I got educated. The first book that I wrote, which was a book called Science, it was about quantum physics and the paranormal. I got so much hate mail.
I bet. From
Christian extremists, because in the book I kind of equated the 0 point field with a God force. I mean, I was just making a comment. I got so much praise from the Church of Satan people contacting me left and right. We believe in the power of science, and we believe that science can explain this and that. And I was shocked. And I actually was on a radio show, and I kind of made an offensive statement about members of, the Church of Satan. And I got an email from someone saying, I'd like to educate you on the truth. And I said, okay, please do, because if I'm wrong, I'll handily admit it. And I was absolutely stunned. I mean, there's such a negative stigma, and the truth is so different. And like you said, there's extremists in every religion, including Satanism and Luciferianism. And, and even in the big Western traditions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, there's extremists. But the general stuff, I was like, oh, wow, I am absolutely blown away. And I apologize for my ignorance. So that was absolutely fascinating. And the thing is, people were saying, well, you shouldn't get into this demonology stuff. And I thought, well, I have to act as sort of as a reporter. My job is to convey information, and I'm not afraid to do that. I don't think a demon is going to come after me and try to kill me for writing a book. There's other books out there about demons and demonology, and nobody's died yet. Mm-hmm. And I had to kind of really look inside myself and wonder, is belief a part of what, causes some people to not be afraid? Maybe because I don't ascribe to the religious traditions that believe, I can look at it very objectively. I've not had any, the only bad things that have happened to me have come from another book called Mind Wars, because I wrote bad things about the Church of Scientology.
Oh, my God.
But, and it's about mind control and all that stuff. And I did experience a lot of really negative things. And that kind of scared me, because I thought, all right, well, maybe there's something to this. If I type out the names of these demons, am I opening a door? But I'll tell you, nothing has happened. And I was almost a little disappointed. But, I'm not saying that they don't exist, but I do wonder if a person's belief system is critical to whether or not you're going to experience anything.
It certainly feels that way. It feels like it would come from each individual.
Right.
Marie, do you mind if we hold right there? We're going to take a quick break for our sponsor. And when we come back, we're going to go to the Garden of Eden and serpents and Jesus and the devil and Catholicism and all that stuff. If you're not too scared, we'll be right back. This is Captain Ron and Tony Sweet on Truth Be Told.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to begin? Do you fear your job is in jeopardy, or is your business income reduction keeping you awake at night? We're in the best time in 25 years to make a fortune in real estate without using your money or credit. My name is Ron LeGrand, and I've taught 500,000 people to do just that, and personally bought hundreds of houses myself. If you'll call 800-970-6155, 24 hours, and leave your information, I'll send you the first 500 callers my hot new CD, Foreclosure Fortunes, and my best-selling book to help you get started absolutely free. I'll show you how to build a six-figure income part-time with no previous experience and no license, even if you're a busy professional. Call 800-970-6155, 24 hours, and get my new book and CD free. That's 800-970-6155. Take your life back and make this your best year ever. Call 800-970-6155 now.
All right, we're back. This is Truth Be Told. I'm Tony Sweet with Captain Ron. We have Marie D. Jones. She's a best-selling author. We've been talking about several of her books. We started with Supervolcanoes, and now we're talking about demons, the devil, and fallen angels. And Marie, I find it fascinating, and during your research, and like you said, every religion, I believe, has deciphered certain things differently. And I think I always give the example. I remember going fishing with my father, and he would catch maybe a 3-pound bass. And within 10 years, that bass is now 20 pounds, and it was the biggest. You know what I'm saying? So I feel that through generations, how we can exaggerate stories and myths and everything else. And so even when we go to Garden of Eden, and even Gethsemane with Jesus and the devil, I've heard that Jesus and the devil, through some people, that it was one and the same. Like he was battling his self. And in your own research, could you give us some examples of some of the myths and legends, and then even through scripture that you saw that got exaggerated, and maybe not in some religions and maybe not in others?
Well, and I think in mythology and religious texts, which are really stories, they can have great truths and even some facts, but they're written in story form. Otherwise, you'd bore people to death.
Right.
There's always going to be embellishment, misinterpretation, or when they're later adapted, you lose something in this translation and you might gain something in another translation. So none of these are original texts that we have to go on. And then when we read them, we add our own personal beliefs and spin and interpretation. So, the idea of, let's say, Lucifer, which a lot of people still look at as being the devil, and Satan, the truth is there's a lot of controversy over whether or not these are all the same persona or archetype. Lucifer specifically had some associations early on with the planet Venus, and the fact that it was so bright in the sky, but it was bright in the morning, and that there are references in the Old Testament to the morning star, the bright star. Lucifer, according to myth and legend, was said to be the most beautiful angel by God's side. But he had an ego, and he questioned God's authority, so he got booted out of heaven as a quote-unquote falling star. Okay, and then it became fallen angel. So if we look at that, we might think that maybe thousands of years ago, people looked at falling stars in the sky and created these really cool stories around them and added a deity, which is really where mythology comes from. But to this day, people look at Lucifer as being the same thing as an awful, heinous, ugly, horrendous devil. Well, he wasn't. He was actually kind of a beautiful figure of light that fell from the sky. That could be literally and figuratively. We don't know, because we don't know what the intentions were of the original authors of these religious texts. So in every religion, in every tradition, in every culture, you're going to have some variations of demons and angels and good and bad, because we're human. And, we respond to symbols, especially archetypal symbols, universal symbols that we can all understand no matter where we come from, what we look like, what our skin color is, or what our religious background is. We just give them different names. We might give them a little bit of a different origin story, but they're basically all the same. So in a lot of cultures, you have mentions of the forces of good and evil, doing, and a good deity versus a bad deity. And they have their warriors. The good deity has the angelic warriors. The bad deity, obviously, the ugly, mean, hostile demons. And you also have a lot of mention of serpents, dragons, snake symbolism, including the Garden of Eden, and references to Satan as being a serpent and a dragon and a snake.
It's nuts.
So,
Maria,
and,
let me
then
go ahead.
Go into the Mesoamerican traditions, and they have serpents and snakes. And so these are global symbols that just get a little bit of a different storytelling angle.
Maria, let me ask you this. When you're doing this research on this and the fallen angels, we've had people on the show that have called the fallen angels, they somehow associate that with the alien extraterrestrials sometimes, or the messengers. Did you find any of that come up with your research?
Oh, absolutely. In the books of Enoch, the idea that fallen angels were the Nephilim, the giants, that they were offspring of male, quote-unquote, angels, which could be extraterrestrials, and worldly, earthly women. And you see that in so many different cultures. You see mentions of these entities that they might be called gods, they might be called angels, but they almost look like they're more, it's like the ancient astronaut theory, they almost look like they're just misinterpreting aliens. And there is a really, large group of people that working in the ancient knowledge world that suggests that the things that we called demons and angels were indeed alien civilizations, that we didn't have the scientific capacity to say, they came here in a craft from Zeta Reticuli or whatever, how many millions of light years away.
Right.
No, they came in chariots from the sky, or if they came out of the water, they were the gods of the oceans arising from the sea. So yeah, absolutely, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence for that.
Yeah, he said you just switch out a couple of those words and it changes everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like it's just the technology
it
didn't know about it.
Connotations away, right? If you stop calling angels and demons demons, and you call them aliens, basically what you've done is you've taken the religious spin off of them, and you've opened up this whole new possibility that our ancestors were either intermingling with aliens or were, and that maybe we all have alien genes in our genetic history, and and am I an offspring of the Nephilim, or so yeah, we begin to wonder about human evolution and whether aliens did kind of interfere with our evolution.
Tony, I want to know the answer. Which is it?
Yeah.
She just told you. You're not paying attention, Ron.
Well, no, it's not. If you know definitively, Marie, if you know the answer, tell us right here. Break it live.
I have no clue. And the thing is, our DNA would be so filtered down by now that we wouldn't be able to pinpoint alien from human. We are what we are, but we do question where we came from. And like I said, there's a ton of you read the Bible, the Old and New Testament. There's all kinds of weird references to creatures that come from the sky. Now, whether you want to call those angels or you want to call them aliens, that's up to you. But again, we have to remember people that were writing about these things at that time would not have had the scientific acumen to understand that something, could be from a parallel universe or from somewhere out in our expansive universe. My gosh, at that point, we didn't have the Hubble telescopes, let alone CERN and ideas of alternate dimensions and other universes and time travel and all of those things. So we looked at what was right in front of us, and we put an interpretation on it that made sense to us at the time.
Well, this is fascinating, and I think a lot of people are really enjoying this. And I think for me, the religious part of it, I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in the Bible Belt. I grew up, I wasn't forced to go to church. I actually went to church on my own, but I think it made me have a whole different view because I find every religion very fascinating on how they worship, how they teach, and how they interpret. And and
they all have a part of the truth.
Yeah.
It's just that we are now left to determine what is it, because all religions are teaching similar concepts, just with different spins, and it's up to us to figure out where the nuggets of truth and fact are in there.
And that's what I think, like you mentioned, the DNA being diluted to enough, it's hard to tell. I believe also religious is that way too, because there's so many different religions, and even in Christianity, there's thousands of different denominations of Christianity, and every single one find their own. So it's hard I think that's why a lot of people have left the church and have went on to spirituality instead of religion, because it's hard to determine what is what and what is what they call fake news now.
Well, yeah, and then you have even the religious texts that are revered by these religions have been rewritten and altered and rewritten, and there's the Hello Kitty version of the Bible, and there's the King, there's all these different interpretations. So we don't even know if we're reading the original intention, and then all of the books that were left out of the chosen text that we don't get the context really of the bigger picture. Yeah. And I think now you have a lot of people that want to know that. So they're kind of leaving organized religion to go learn more about the religion, which is strange.
Well, I think you are fascinating. And before we get out of here, we have just a few minutes left. I definitely want to invite you back because this is great conversation. I know our people are loving it. And there's so many other books that we have to talk about. And before we go, I do want to talk about the UFO and alien, because you had the opportunity to be on Ancient Aliens, and that's one of our favorite shows. And the alien portion of it, I find fascinating too, because we talked briefly about it, but we were also talking about the DNA. I think I don't know if anybody's ever had a DNA test that showed undetermined. Maybe they have, but I even have. I'm a mutt. I have so much different parts of the world. I even have 1%. India from India, and which I would have never guessed that. But do you feel in your research and do you feel that the aliens are still among us, and do you feel that they will return in our lifetime? Do you feel that they will return to break the mold of religion and take us into a new era?
Well, this might not be popular, but this is my personal belief, because again, I was raised by a scientist.
Right.
But just based on the recent, and I've been a UFO fanatic since I was like 3 or 4 years old. Don't ask me why.
Nice.
I have no clue. But I believe they have been here. They're probably around, and they always will be. Not necessarily the same civilization, but the reason why I believe that is because I look at human behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the way that we all like to go to the zoo, and we like to watch wildlife shows where they show people tagging and tracking wild animals, and we're fascinated with anything that isn't human, in the same way that I'm sure the many potential civilizations out there are fascinated by us and other civilizations on other planets. I think that, it's like National Geographic. They want to observe us, maybe not directly into our faces, the way that we don't go out in the wild and just jump in front of a bunch of lions.
Right.
We kind of hide behind some trees, with our big photo lens camera thingy. I think that we're being observed. I think we always have been. I think we have been assisted, but I absolutely don't believe that they will save us. And the reason why I say that is because what would be the point? In our own evolution, I think we as a species need to learn how to save our own butts.
Right.
Maybe assist, maybe keep us from doing something that would affect other parts of the galaxy or the universe. Just like if we see that there's a certain species of animal becoming extinct, we might take them into captivity and try to breed them. I think it's similar to that.
That's great.
I think you're spot on, Marie. I really
so,
do. I think the way you sum that up is really, to me, makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
What do you think, Tony?
Watch tomorrow. They invade and kill us all.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, quite it's like a jungle theory. It's the same thing, for us. Could be.
I love it. Well, unfortunately, our time is up, and you've been such a.
Fast.
I told you it's going to go fast.
It's super fast. You have so much to talk about. It's great.
And definitely, will you
I
please?
would love to come back anytime. Yeah.
Yes, that's what we like to hear, and yeah, it was fascinating.
Sounds good.
Also,
Thank
guys,
you.
truth be told, we'll be at we're going to be at Starworks 3 weeks from today, as a matter of fact, which is in Laughlin, Nevada, for that Starworks conference. Remember that, Tony?
I'm excited about it, and
it's going to be great.
I'm hoping it's a nice weather, not too hot. I'm sure in November it's not.
That's what you're worried about. We're going to go solve the problems of the universe, and you're worried about the weather.
Of course, of course. The hair.
Your hair looks good that day, Tony.
That's all that matters. Even if there's a nuclear fallout, I still want my hair to look good.
This is Tony. All right, Marie, see what I deal with?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
That's a man after my own heart.
There we go. There we go. That's the way to win them over. Go to mariedjones.com. Pick up many of her books. I mean, she has multiple books, best-selling author, very fascinating. Do you have any events coming up that you're going to be speaking at that you can tell us about?
Nothing coming up for the rest of the year. Just working on more books and all kinds of stuff.
Perfect.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Until next time, this is Truth Be Told. And I'm Tony Sweet, and this is Captain Ron. We got Marie D. Jones. We'll see you next time right here on Truth Be Told.